One of the toughest challenges in governance is knowing when a strategy that once made perfect sense no longer fits the realities of the market. For directors, the question isn't just whether to change course, but how to recognize the need for a pivot early, communicate it effectively, and maintain stakeholder confidence throughout the transition. In this segment, we'll discuss the board's role in navigating strategic course corrections and the leadership behaviors that help organizations adapt without losing trust with Jane Scaccetti, Director of PENN Entertainment. Jane, boards often approve a strategy based on the best information available at the time. What separates boards that recognize early that circumstances have changed from those that stay committed to a strategy for too long?
Bill, it's a great question. Boards need to be committed to a strategy, but good boards recognize they can't be blindly committed to a strategy that had assumptions that are just no longer applicable. So they have to distinguish, and that's not always easy in and of itself, right? You need to distinguish between short-term noise and what has actually changed. What facts have changed that should result in us changing that strategy. Not every disappointing quarter means that you need to change the strategy. Sometimes you need to dig a little bit deeper to ask those questions like, should we be doing a strategic pivot without abandoning the goal, but do it in a different way? So it's just recognizing that something has changed, facts have changed, and that the original strategy is not the strategy or the path that we should be pursuing now. So, what do good boards do? They first ask, what would have to be true for this strategy to work, and what are we seeing that might suggest those conditions no longer exist?
Hmm. And so when a company needs to change course strategically, how candid should a company be about the prior strategy? What do you think?
Bill, this is a difficult thing to maneuver, right? Because public companies need to be candid enough to be credible, but they can't be looking like they're backward looking so that the discussion becomes, a blame exercise. Did the CEO not produce? Should the CEO be changed? You really need to have credibility by saying our goal is to explain what changed, what we learned, and why a new path is better. So the credibility requires you to have candor with your shareholders and your stakeholders, but candor doesn't mean that it's a confession. You're not saying that wow, the board should help, the board did a mistake. You have to be candid with them and say, here's what we believed, here's what changed, here's what we learned, and here's what we're going to do differently. This is a time where tone really matters. You want to be direct, you want to be disciplined, you want to be forward looking. Defensive language just creates suspicion. Over apologizing, that just sounds like you can't be trusted or things are unstable. And you can't also be overconfident because then you're tone deaf, because you need to say what has changed and why you are doing what you're doing, what this pivot is, and keep it forward looking.
Investors and employees, they can lose trust quickly when a company reverses direction. How should boards think about shareholder trust during a pivot?
This is something that I have seen that I think is crucial. I have seen boards speak to shareholders only and not focus on what that message is to their employees. And so, trust isn't just built by messaging alone. This isn't about spin. This isn't about how do we say it in such a way that, our investors won't abandon us or call for heads to be rolled, right? It really is about keeping the messaging consistent. Employees and investors will listen for different things, but both want coherence. They investors want to know you're disciplined, you're being accountable, you're still creating value. Employees want confidence, they want clarity, they want a reason to believe in the organization, and they want to believe that the organization knows where it's going. So boards should look for a narrative that's consistent. Do the proxies, the earnings calls, the investor decks, the employees' communication, even your compensation decisions, they all have to tell the same story. It has to say, this is tied to this strategy, but the strategy has changed, so our incentives going forward have to change for them to be real. So all of this is woven together, but there are different things that those constituents are looking for. Again, the investors want to hear about discipline and accountability. They want to know that you are trying to improve the value of the company that they own. Employees, they want to know you've got this, that this is not you spinning out of control, but that you are in a controlled situation moving forward.
And so, in your experience, what are the most important boardroom behaviors during a period of strategic course correction?
Bill, I've been around long enough and served on enough boards that I can tell you I've seen this done poorly in a
Mm,
boardroom. I've seen dysfunctional boards immediately seek blame.
yeah,
I've seen boards where maybe a strategy wasn't completely bought into by every member of the board, but those that were perhaps a little doubting or weren't as sure came around to understand it. And now with this course correction, it's more important to say why they never agreed with it and why we shouldn't have done it. And that's not going to help anyone. So it's important for boards, and I've seen good boards do this. And what do good boards do? Well, they ask management, is this working? Is this working the way you expected?
yeah,
And management, that relationship with the board in the past is going to matter, because management has to be able to step up without fear and be able to be candid and have this open relationship with the board to say, no, this is what's changed, and this is why we can't pursue it in this manner or pursue it in this direction, or this is why it's better to go into this direction. And directors need to keep asking about the facts. What are we seeing? Not just whether management can defend the current path, but find out or defend a different path, but keep asking what the facts are showing, so that everyone is listening to the same conversation. Directors, I've seen this too. Directors need to be independent. They need to challenge those assumptions. They can't be so in love with the CEO that they just agree with the CEO's change or not changing and sticking to it. You need to be
yeah.
independent. You need to ask, what are we seeing? What were the factors that you brought to us that led us to the original strategy, and what has changed? Um, and that requires a certain amount of discipline as well. So, the boards, again, it's difficult for boards to do this, right? It's uncomfortable, but they have to not be looking to blame. They need to be looking to find the facts, move forward with, what it is that we should do. They shouldn't be over promising for the future. I've seen this as well. Things didn't work out. We're pivoting, but boy, we've got this now and it's going to be even better.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that message is based in facts, is consistent. Um, and even if a board member now doesn't agree with what's happening and there's a conversation, that's not disloyalty.
Mm,
They need to be able to ask those hard questions of management and say, what I'm seeing, is it working out? The metrics that we were watching aren't producing. What alternative should we consider? What course should be changed? What's a new strategy? Or is it are there new tactics that we should be pursuing? But the strategy might be the same, but the tactics are changing. Like, there has to be this whole conversation that takes place.